as the great agnostic, Robert Ingersoll. He gave speeches on religion and other subjects in the 19th century, late 19th century mostly. And I appreciate Ingersoll's ability to state the truth as he saw it without cutting himself off from other people. Ingersoll was an agnostic, so it won't surprise you to know that he didn't believe in heaven or hell. But he cared about people, and he wanted to ease their fear of death so they could focus on the goodness to be found in life. This is a short passage from a funeral oration that Ingersoll gave for a friend. Immortality is a word that through the ages, hope has been whispering to love. The miracle of thought we cannot understand. The mystery of life and death we cannot comprehend. This chaos called world has never been explained. Fate is speechless. Destiny is dumb. And the secret of the future never has been told. We love, we wait, we hope. The more we love, the more we fear. Upon the tenderest heart, the deepest shadow falls. All paths, whether filled with thorns or flowers, end here. Here, success and failure are the same. Character survives. Goodness lives. Love is immortal. That's the reading. Some 30 years ago in Florida, about this time of year, I dropped my child off at a preschool at the local Jewish temple. The director took me aside that day to tell me, I thought I should let you know, we don't do Halloween here. I asked, why not? She said, we don't do any Christian holidays. It made perfect sense, but until that moment, it had not occurred to me that Halloween was Christian. Of course it is. Halloween is Hallows Eve, where hallow means not ghosts, but saints. And so it's the day before All Saints' Day. But Halloween, the way we celebrate it, belongs mostly to folk religion. It's Christian only in the sense that Rudolph, Santa, Mardi Gras, and Easter bonnets are Christian. Some Christian clergy even disapprove of Halloween for the same essential reason Puritan New England outlawed celebrating Christmas. Folk holidays release all sorts of passions and blur the boundaries between one religion and another. Folk holidays fill Puritans of all denominations with what H.L. Mencken called the haunting fear that someone, somewhere, might be happy. Sadly, those fears are not altogether unfounded, as you'll know if you think about the scene at the Halloween celebration in Seoul, South Korea, this weekend. Folk religion, which tends to be global, tends to cross religious boundaries, can release passions that can be destructive, as passions can be. So, like related folk traditions, the Day of the Dead in Mexico, the neo-pagan festival of Samhain, Halloween poses a challenge to some central themes of mainstream religion and Christianity in particular. I'm talking about teachings about how to cope with death. One of the greatest spiritual problems we each face is how to keep on living in the face of loss. The loss of friends and loved ones, and finally the loss of our own lives. A religion that can't take death seriously is not a serious religion. It can't help us to get our fear of death in hand so that we can live and help each other. A religion that gives only easy answers, that proposes a solution without first acknowledging that no solution takes away the pain. Such a religion is a fraud, a weak staff. It can't sustain us in the long run. One kind of fake solution in its Christian version begins with the healing ministry of Jesus. So much of Jesus' popularity came from his reputation as a healer. Jesus could heal blindness, leprosy, paralysis. Even Lazarus, who was so dead he stank, walked out of his tomb when Jesus called. No wonder Jesus drew such crowds. A lot of people needed to be healed one way or another. A lot of us still do. Healing is a subject I thought a lot about as a student training for the hospital chaplaincy at the Peter Brent Brigham Hospital, as it was then known. My teacher was Bill Leach, an Irish priest. We young student chaplains were impressed with all the medical expertise and machinery around us, and we liked to think our work, too, might help people to get well. There was even some scientific evidence it might be so. But Father Leach had a different focus. He reared back in his chair and closed his eyes, as he was wont to do when uttering profundities, and said, "You know, it may be and it may not be that we can help a patient to get well. But always remember this statistic. Of all the people Jesus healed, 100% subsequently died." It was a caution not to get caught up so much in overcoming problems that we forget some problems can only be prolonged, not solved. Healing was the doctor's job. Our job had to do with helping people cope with life, including life losses that can't be healed. Bill Leach's caution fits the spirit of All Hallows Eve. Against our tendency to see death as a problem to be solved by miracles or medicine or right beliefs, folk wisdom teaches that to live well is to live among the dead, aware of death as a reality that touches us in every moment from birth on. Everything we love, we ultimately lose. Everything we value crumbles into dust. We all know that, and yet it takes us by surprise. We are attached to things. We love flesh. We confer our practical wisdom on the special people who surround us from birth on. We don't live on immaterial essences alone. Material objects, people and possessions, even natural beauty, eventually fall to the advance of time. And when we lose them, we experience a real loss. That's why, despite an almost total lack of real evidence, so many of us hope or even expect to live forever. Now, here I have to offer a confession. Unlike many of you, I was never taught to expect heaven or hell. I was raised a Unitarian in a family steeped in science. I was taught and still expect that when I die, I'll cease to be. I hope I'll be mourned. I hope I'll be remembered for a while. My life will have continuing effects, but memories and effects are not the same as me. I will cease to be. That's what I was taught, and it still makes sense to me. My non-existence after death is hard for me to imagine, but no harder than my non-existence before birth. We all have a starting point in thinking about death, and that's mine. I'm a Midwestern humanist. It's why I resonate with Robert Ingersoll, who did not believe in God, but who, like his minister father, still wanted to ease people's fear of death as a way of opening the door to fuller life. Like Ingersoll, I understand the wish to solve or fix death that is so central to the Christian project. St. Paul, for example, said that if the, quote, if the early tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Well, that's a nice solution. Paul makes death sound like a real estate transaction, swapping an old tent for a mansion with a view. It's still possible to believe things like that, but in the last few centuries, it's gotten harder. In Paul's time, people simply could believe that heaven was a place, that dead bodies could be resurrected. You can still believe those things, but it is no longer simple. Since 16 or 1700 or so, we've had to reconcile our theological beliefs with scientific understandings of the universe. Beliefs like, when you die, you go to heaven, have to overcome new obstacles, even if it's a metaphor, in which case, what exactly does it mean? Or it might be an alternative cosmology, in which life is not what biologists say it is, and the universe is not laid out as the astronomers describe. It can be done, of course, and many people do it, but believing such things is no longer as easy as it was in Paul's time. That's why, over the past few centuries, traditional and scientific worldviews have diverged, especially among educated people. One of the pioneers on the secular side of the divide was Ludwig Feuerbach, the father of contemporary atheism, who in the 1800s called the afterlife a harmful delusion. For Feuerbach, religion is no more than a projection of the best in human life. God is what an ideal parent ought to be. Heaven is what earth should be. Rather than face up to our true calling, which is to turn earth into heaven, we set heaven at a distance. My task, wrote Feuerbach, is to convert candidates for the hereafter into students of the here and now, from religious lackeys of the heavenly into self-confident citizens of the world. For Feuerbach, who influenced Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud, and through them, everybody, traditional religion was a symptom of a loss of nerve. The more self-confident we are, the more we own our own best qualities, the less, he thought, we'll need religion. Feuerbach's argument has faults. He thought that by exposing the motives of believers, that they were projecting their best onto the heavens, he could disprove what they believe in. It's an ad hominem argument. And he seemed to think, along with many critics of religion in the present day, that by undermining the beliefs that help people cope with death, he's somehow doing them a favor. We all fear death, and we all need comfort, not just to make us comfortable, but so we'll have the courage to take care of one another and live well. You can't draw simple lines between the quality of someone's life and their beliefs about the afterlife. But I do think there's a correlation between anxiety about death and dissatisfaction with this life. Some people's lives have plain, clear meanings. The mother whose life is centered on her children. The person whose life work or hobbies bring them joy. If such a person believes in heaven, its joys and pleasures will be made of the same stuff life is. If such a person thinks death is the end, the feeling is, I've lived a full life. Now it's someone else's turn. In contrast, people who feel that this life is empty or meaningless are more apt to fret about the next one. They worry about hell or karma if they believe in them, or if they don't, the long, dark sleep seems less a rest than a confinement. My beliefs about the afterlife don't spare me from the challenges of living, and I'm guessing yours don't either. For help with that, I look for companions, friends in the here and now, and kindred spirits, some of them from long ago. One place I find help is in the wisdom literature, like the book of Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. Wisdom writings show that even among the ancients, there were people with the courage to face facts, acknowledge fear, and accept that big problems of life don't go away by magic or by having the correct beliefs. Wisdom literature is international and was. Hebrew wisdom echoes insights also found in Aesop's fables and the Jataka tales of Buddhist India. Some of the Psalms are wisdom psalms. Listen, for example, to Psalm 90. The days of our years are 70. That'd be figured out 70 years. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, 80, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. So, teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Wisdom writers say over and over again that let the pious try as they may, the problem of mortality remains. All that we love, we lose. And in the end, we face the greatest loss, our own death, which brings with it the loss of all that may remain. It's a problem not to solve, but to accept. Salvation is not escape, but discovery. Discovery of depth and meaning in the face of loss. I don't believe in immortality, and yet I sense in life some aspect of eternity, an immortality of influence and an eternity of depth in every moment. Nothing can remove the grief of pain or loss. But when we see life from the perspective of the infinite, what we lose in our illusions, we can more than gain in wisdom. And wisdom helps us to live well. A retired physics professor once told me that she likes to compare life to a pebble dropped into a pond. The ripples go out and reflect and travel. Some of the energy is changed to heat. Some of it might help erode a rock into sand. After a while, the consequences of the pebble are attenuated, so you can't trace them and much less reconstruct their source. The cause is gone, but in one form or another, the effect continues. The world will never be the same, quite. That's the immortality of influence. For many Unitarian Universalists, the immortality of influence is credible and comforting. We are this worldly people as a group. Why not build our heaven on the earth? Let our memorial be the things we've done, the people we've helped, the children and grandchildren we've raised, whatever else you believe. The immortality of influence is an important piece of anybody's faith, I think. It's comforting, but for me it's not enough. Part of me agrees with Woody Allen, who said, I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve it through not dying. Besides, a good life doesn't guarantee good influence. It's your best bet, but it's no guarantee. Just as when ripples spread from the pebble, they quit resembling a pebble, good acts can have bad consequences. The bestseller Chaos illustrates the point by reference to the butterfly, whose wings might cause a hurricane a hemisphere away. The point is not to be afraid of butterflies, but that in a complex system like the atmosphere, a minor difference in initial conditions can cause vast differences in results. And the result may bear no resemblance to the cause. Families and societies are complex systems too. It's impossible to predict perfectly the consequences of our actions. Good people have had bad children. Hard work sometimes comes to naught, and kindness doesn't always bear fruit in kindness. I do hope that my life will have some lasting good effect, but I've performed too many funerals for the formerly famous to know that it's not a gamble. And so, I look for comfort to a second kind of immortality as well. Life can be infinite in depth as well as length. One symbol of eternity is a timeline or tunnel stretching straight out of the past into the future. Time can also be a twisted sausage, doubled over in every moment, so it's possible to touch other moments in the past or future. We live not only in this moment, but in an infinity of memories and hopes. In any moment of this life, I can touch depths of eternity that give perspective for my problems, courage for my fear, and help me to glimpse meanings for my life that render the desire for heaven vapid by comparison. What are these moments that give access to an eternity of depth? Moments of prayer, moments of meditation, the first kiss of a new lover, and those later kisses that make true love ever new. A sparkling springtime moment at the age of 9 when I was walking on a log and singing about a grandfather clock and saying, I am going to remember this day. And see, I did. A moment looking out the window of a college classroom on a gray Ohio day and noticing a stoplight shining red at College and Lorraine streets? Are there eternities of depth in your life too? Moments that remind you time is not a tunnel, but a sausage, twisting over itself so that a woman in her 40s can almost touch a girl on her new tricycle with one hand and a grieving widow in her rocker on the other. We like to think of ourselves as striding forward toward the future. But here's another bit of wisdom from the ancients. In Hebrew and in Maori and many other languages, the image is that we walk backward toward the future, seeing nothing of the future and only everything in the past, or some of the past. Everything we see and everything that we can conjecture about what will happen next is based on a rear view of what has happened in the past. We can touch eternities here, now, in our memories, in our connections with what we love and who we love. An eternity of influence and an eternity of depth. These beliefs help ease my fear of death and open up a door to better, fuller living. The psalmist said it well. The days of our years are 70. Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. I'm not sure what I would do with an eternity of time, but in these moments of epiphany, we can touch a depth of meaning in each moment and know that it is sufficient.